Welcome to 6,000 Years of History. I am Sebastian, and today I'll be talking about the Russian Revolution, which will be broken down into a multi-part series about the different Russian revolutions that took place in the early part of the 1900s. Today I'll be talking about the 1905 revolution, because this was the first really important revolution to take place, as it forced Tsar Nicholas II, the last Tsar of the Russian Empire, to create a parliament which was known as the Duma. However, this parliament didn't have any real power, and the Russian Tsar still had full control over his empire. However, despite the Duma not having any real power, the creation of the Duma was a very important step in the right direction for the Russian people gaining freedom against the oppressive Tsar. This revolution would also help inspire other revolutions to take place, and eventually would help the foundation of what became known as the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, better known as the USSR or the Soviet Union, in 1917. Now, what were the causes of the 1905 revolution? Well, there are many reasons for the start of the revolution. One large reason was the Russo-Japanese War. This saw the Russian Empire be embarrassed as they lost to the poor Asian nation at the time, while the Russians were a strong European power with the world's largest army. Now, why was the Russo-Japanese War a factor in causing the 1905 revolution? Well, the reason was the outcome of the war, which was a loss for the Russian Empire, saw massive economic hardships to be placed on the country. Another major issue was the ethnic minorities that had, by the time of the revolution, grown tired of the government not doing anything to protect them, as well as an industrial urban working class who had just appeared in Russia as industry had just begun to be created at the time, grew tired of the monarchy doing nothing to protect them, not allowing trade unions, and having them work long hours for very little pay, which helped lead to protests outside the Tsar's Winter Palace in Petrograd, known as St. Petersburg today. This protest was led by a priest named Father Gapon, who was the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church, and he was leading these peasants to the Winter Palace to deliver a petition to the Tsar, which they demanded he create new laws to increase the wages of the people who worked in the factories, as well as improve their working conditions and other protective measures for the workers and peasants of the Russian Empire. Doesn't sound bad, right? Well, this event did turn into one of the bloodiest events of the entire revolution, because when palace guards fired on the protesters in an event which became known as the Bloody Sunday Massacre, which took place on the 22nd of January 1905, and a total amount of people that died is somewhere between 200 and 1,000 people killed by the palace guards. Many historians believe that this single event of the Bloody Sunday Massacre is the single greatest event in what caused the active part of the 1905 revolution and the true start to the revolution. Because shortly after this event, many communist and socialist groups in Russian Poland called for a general strike, and by the end of 1905, 400,000 Polish workers were striking. This meant that half of Russia's industrial workers in the European half of the empire were striking, and 93.2% of Poland's workers were striking. Soon after the Poles began to strike, the strikes spread to Finland, Estonia, Riga, Latvia, Lithuania, Ukraine, Belarus, and even the Caucasus and many other parts of the Russian Empire. Shortly after these strikes began to spread, all higher education institutes in the empire were forcibly closed for the remainder of the year, and which saw the addition of students to the protests. And now, students are known to be very rowdy when they protest, and this led to more and more violence. A strike by railway workers began on the 21st of October 1905. This quickly developed into a general strike in St. Petersburg and Moscow. This promoted the setting up of a short-lived St. Petersburg Soviet of Workers delegates, a mixture of Bolsheviks and Mensheviks. This would see the likes of Julius Martov and Georgy Benekonov spar with Lenin. Leon Trotsky, who felt very strong connection with the Bolsheviks, had not still given up a compromise with the Mensheviks. However, he still spearheaded a strike action of over 200 factories. By the 26th of October 1905, over 2 million workers that worked on the railways were striking. There were almost no active railways in Russia. Growing interior ethnic confrontation throughout the Caucasus resulted in Armenian massacres. This resulted in substantial damage to the city of Baku, which had large Russian oil fields there. At this point in the revolution, the monarchy realized that there was nothing they could do to stop the revolution, and decided to go with their only option to bring peace to their empire and the railways and other industries back online again. They created the Duma, which was a legislative assembly that would effectively transform the Russian Empire from an authoritarian monarchy into a constitutional monarchy. However, there was still a significant catch to the Duma. They had no real power. They could make suggestions to Tsar Nicholas II, but however, he had the final say, and he could dissolve the Duma at will. However, this was a step in the right direction for the Russian people, who were feeling alienated by the monarchy. The successful creation of the Duma would not end the revolutionary fire in the Russian people like the Tsar had hoped, but would instill a passionate fire for the Russian people to push for more reforms, mainly from the Petrograd Soviet, which had been created by the Bolsheviks and would be the main support base for Lenin and the rest of the Communist Party for the rest of the revolution. This would eventually result in the beginning of the Soviet Union, which would fall in 1991. I would just like to thank you all for listening to that awful video. I hate it so much, but I guess it's a good attempt though. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little something from this video. If you have any more questions, you may leave them down in the comments below. I will reply to you as quickly as I see them, and any questions you have, I will not do any projects for you. I'll say this again, you can also go check out our Patreon down below for a book fund for us to do more research, more accurate research, at least without needing the internet, because the internet is actually not a very reliable source to use these days. As well as you can also check out our Twitter down below, and you can also join our Discord group. I'd like to thank you all again for watching the video. Goodbye.